Well, welcome back to our library studio after a good, long, and restful weekend of translating and interpreting the testimony of Yahweh. It's good to be back with you. We're going to return to our continuing story of the last word picture. We are, of course, well past the text of the 31st Mashal, but there's so much more to learn about what happened to have a adoptive mother show up at Dode's doorstep right there in the castle and read the king, her adoptive son, the riot act and tell him that he was abusing alcohol and needed to stop, that he was way too focused on the physicality of women as opposed to their intelligence, that he was squandering the opportunity that was before him, that he was not to be an ordinary king, but to be exceptional, and that she would adorn him for success, that she would be there to support him. And through that process, we say, well, who in the world was this person? We find out it's the person that Yahweh and Dode designate as the Amma, Yahweh's Amma, the productive mother. Dode would say of this that she is the most amazing of women and that she is a shar, which is beneficial and offers blessings as a result of all she has to contribute. And we were reading that and saying, who in the world could have visited with Dode under these circumstances? And we read what God had to say about the Amma and how it progressed through Ruth, who was particularly important in Leah's, my wife's, relationship with Yahweh. It brought us together, actually, some 18 years ago. And that, and I'm naming her Leah, we find out that Leah announces that she's the Amma. And now we're dealing with how in the world is this possible? And the answer became fairly simple and yet exceedingly profound. And that is that God has souls, that nephesh, that he has encountered along the experience with human, that began 6,000 years ago in the garden, were the first humans, but the first humans given an Salma, and therefore able to relate to Yahweh. And from that time to this time, he has found a small number of souls that share attributes and attitudes that God finds not only serviceable, but attractive. And he has deployed those individuals on a necessary basis through time to keep his people and his plan on track. By doing so, he's not interfering with free will. He is not having to leave Shamaim. He is not contradicting his operating procedure, which was to work through men and women as opposed to apart from them or against them or over them. And he is able to enjoy the results of delegating something that he knows this individual is going to be successful in achieving. Watches, a child of his perform, which brings him great pleasure. And we find that those who are part of God's story get the support and tutelage they need, have the circumstances around them prepared in such a way that they're going to be successful without overpowering the situation, without God becoming so assertive that he can't be denied, which would work against his whole purpose. And so we've realized that the first of these individuals was Chanok, known as Enoch. And when we investigated what God had to say about him and his name, we realized that this was actually the same fellow that we meet later as Ethan Ha as Rocky, whose name conveys very similar attributes, and that this is one of the people, one of the souls that God has found useful, and he has inserted him throughout time. And one of the things which is so profound for me, and we won't get to this, my friends, for a matter of weeks at the earliest. I'm about 75, 80 pages ahead of where we are now in this program in my translations and an analysis of the 89th Mizmor, which has in it the most remarkable verb I have yet encountered in all of my translations. It's a shabuw'ah. And what it says in the context that it was revealed is that God can remain in Shamayim and can deploy a soul of his choosing, one that he has previously tested, such that that individual is properly equipped and suitably similar to God from an attitudinal point of view, that they are assured of accomplishing the mission in support of a person or situation that God views as vital. It is an absolute affirmation of this profound conclusion that we have drawn. And in that same statement, by the way, in the 89th Mizmor, which again we will review in due time, even though it'll be at least the fifth time we've been through it, as part of the Yahweh blog in the last year. I've always loved it. It's been my favorite, and it's the answer to almost everything, but I had never previously thought it would be this personal, and it now is. But it's also an affirmation that we have been right, and we've done a number of programs recently on what caused God to initiate the fall of man, and why we were booted out of the garden and given the 6,000 year opportunity to get our act together and do the three things God was looking for, and why we are being asked to escort a mortal remnant of Israel, after purging them of all traces of religion and politics, back into the conditions of the garden on Sukkah in 2033, so that they can demonstrate that they can do the three things that God is desiring of us. And that same statement refers to the implement that God is using and the person for which it was designed to help as a bashar, which is someone who has been chosen, examined, and proven trustworthy. So it is, again, an affirmation of both of these profoundly important insights that we have deduced recently. So we were talking about Chinook and what is said about him, because his name is actually an identifier that tells us that he was trained and prepared, dedicated, and then deployed for this purpose. And when we're going to listen to what God said as he explained that situation, so that we're prepared to deal with then this intervention that is conducted by Ethan Ha as Rocky. And again, on our program on Friday evening, I shared with you everything that God had to say about Mr. Ha as Rocky. And perhaps would be useful, since we've had the weekend that's in between us. I'm going to go back to that statement on Ethan and what was said about him. It was in context of who Solomon is, but that context is essential to know and appreciate what's following. So God said that He gave, appointing, and providing cerebral acumen and the capacity for wisdom, insights, and understanding by filtering and processing information in proximity to shalom, which means complete and rational appreciation of reconciliation, along with comprehension and insights deduced from a logical analysis of reasoned instruction and through intelligent connections, providing this for his benefit in an ongoing, increasingly significant, frequent, and very demonstrable manner. A breadth and full measure of thoughts and of emotions, of inclinations and motivations of the heart and mind, especially judgment, comparable to the whirling and loose granular sand of the shores, which, showing the way to the benefits of the relationship, was upon the lip, and therefore the words spoken by the one from the sea. Now, this says that God didn't go zap, magic wand. Solomon, as a young lad, he would have been not even a teenager at the time, just an adolescent. You be wise, and you were wise. No, that's not how God did it at all. Wisdom is the ability to process information rationally, to filter right from wrong, good for bad, quality information from that which is erroneous, and then process it such that you can deduce reasonable connections and therefore transition from knowledge to understanding. That's what it is to be intelligent, to be wise, to have cerebral acumen. And that is a process. It is taught. And you have to have somebody that understands the process to teach it. And that's what is being said here, that God not only taught it, it came from the lips of the one from the sea, who would be a goy, who was teaching this to Solomon. Now, he would have to be a goy because we're going to find out that the first exemplar of this was Enoch, and Enoch was long before there were any Israelites. So continuing, it says, and therefore the mental dexterity, the cerebral acumen, and the capacity for wisdom and understanding through knowing, filtering, and processing information, that's from Chokmah, of Shalomo, complete and rational restoration, was increased significantly beyond and differentiated from the wisdom, insights, and understanding of all of the sons of antiquity aforetime, and also beyond the mental dexterity, cerebral acumen, and capacity for intelligent processing of information adversely bound up in Miqra'ey, representing oppressive and troubling religious and political regimes. 1 Kings 4:29 and now 4:30. He was actually and continually skillful and wisely and rationally taught to deduce and comprehend insights, chakam, of everything pertaining to mankind, and all from this one man. He was taught by Ethan, the perpetually reoccurring and continually deployed, the long established and perennially unrelenting and productive Ha-Ezraki, the one springing up as a tree, that'd be reference to the tree of knowledge, coming forth prepared to shine. It's a reference here to the fact that he is akin to the lesser luminary of the fourth day of creation, with Dode being the greater luminary and Dode being the tree of lives. At the right moment, with logical expressions regarding the sequence of events. Hymen, which means the one confirmed who would support me. Kalkol, to comprehend the full measure of things and to complete the mission. Darda, the generational source of knowledge. The offspring, Makol, brought forth to question the twisting and anguishing travail of men. So this is all about Ethan Ha-Ezraki, and what we're going to find is that Ethan's moniker is descriptive of the same usage as is ascribed to Chanakh. And so his name, proper designation, reputation, and renown, his calling and conspicuous position would exist throughout time. Thank you very much. In other words, Ethan is a character that is brought up often by different names and different designations and reputations, but yet conspicuously all through God's story, existing throughout the entire fabric of time. Souls, God can make a soul, which is energy-based, disappear, or can prolong its existence either in Shamayim or in Sheol. And since a soul is the repository of a person's individual personality and their attributes and their attitudes and their experiences and the like, God can then deploy that nephesh soul anytime that he wants and just put it into a physical body and have him do or her do whatever it needs to be done and then remove them. Very much in the way of what we see here with Chanakh. He did the same thing with Elijah, and here now with Ethan Ha-Izraki. So his calling and a conspicuous position would exist throughout time among all of the Goyim, the non-Israelites who turn around and are brought around. Yes, just as Chanakh was a Goyim, because it was long before the Israelites, Ethan Ha-Izraki was also designated as a non-Israelite. And the reason for that is it really doesn't matter the lineage that might have been shown pursuant to him. It has all to do where his soul first originated. Then he conveyed, narrating 30 instructive mashal. These are word pictures and memorable and wise parables and proverbs to inspire astute leadership. In this case, there are 31 of them, and it says that he wrote 30 of them. And I know that there is the want to attribute this to Solomon instead, and to make the number be 3,005 as opposed to these being instructive, these being 30. It's, there are 31 of them. There are not 3,000 of them. So we just need to realize that the same word written in Hebrew can be translated in many different ways, and you need to look at which way is the best way to render it. So he conveyed, narrating 30 instructive mashal word pictures. The last name that was mentioned that he would apply to, of course, is Ethan Ha-Izraki. As memorable and wise parables to inspire astute leadership. These are mashals. And his sure songs, this is important because of the opening statement of the 89th Mizmor. It is a shir song, and that's a fairly uncommon word in prophetic literature, but it is used here. And his shir songs about his journey through life will be 5. So there's 5 songs that he wrote. We certainly know of the most important of them, which is the 89th Mizmor. Each bullish, yes, in another life, he would be equated to a bull, for the tribe, for the children of Israel, learned and instructive, empowering 1,000-fold. He will continuously speak of and concerning the Atzem trees. Why? Because he's the first to determine the identity of the tree of knowledge, as well as the identity of the tree of lives and how they are portrayed in God's story, including the one reaffirmed as the stoutest of them. The stoutest of the trees, of course, is Dod, as the tree of lives, for the benefit of the relationship is with those who are purified and white, inclusive of the restoring witness of the hyssop. And you might say, why mention hyssop? Because it's a loaded term. Uh, Hyssop is used in the first celebration of Passover, as that is what was used to specifically smear the blood on the doorway, to the doorway, serving as the doorway to life, as a sign for the people inside that they were being protected by Pesach. Their lives were extended. And they had no access to hyssop, so it had to be given to them. Plus, hyssop is used routinely in the story of the Adama Parah, which is this man's last hurrah as in his service to Israel during the very sacrifice of the Adama Parah. We find Izab. So it's an important term. It is curative in the Torah for leprosy, which is the sign of unfaithfulness as it relates to God, which to show the way comes out and is extended, withdrawn to serve, descending and produced. Yes, that's the nature of this spirit. This soul is extended routinely, descending from Shamaim and produced, Yatsa, as part of the supportive structure of the home, from ceilings to floor to rafters to beams. And he will continually speak against the beasts to mute them. That is the purpose of the insertion. That's half of it anyway. And you remove the obstacles over and about that which takes flight in opposition to the creepy creatures slithering about, and on behalf of that which multiplies and increases, causing incremental and exponential growth. So this is a lot to be said. This is Malachim 1 Kings 4:33 is the concluding statement. So there's a lot to be said about Ethan Ha-Ezraki. He was a known quantity around both King Dode, and then later his son, King Solomon. All right, so I have made the connection between him and Chinook, and I want to share what God had to say about Chinook. Chinook, trained and prepared, dedicated and deployed, similar name, isn't it, was unfazed by human, or external, I should say, human influences in his consistent walk through life. This is the Hitpael stem, which indicates that he was able to be used by God because he was not influenced by cultural, societal, religious, or political control mechanisms, which affect the overwhelming preponderance of people, making them unusable for God. With the Almighty. Afterwards, he delivered with him Methuselah, a man sent as a stem, an individual dispatched as a shoot from man, and Shalach, sent out as a Shilach, shoot, stem, or sprout. This is indicative of his return as the choder, the stem off the tree of knowledge. At 300 years, then he fathered other sons and daughters. Yes, he would be the father of the covenant. All of the days of Chinook, trained and dedicated as well as deployed, were and will be 365 years. So Chinook, trained and prepared, dedicated and deployed, unfazed by external societal influences, consistently walked, traveling through life with the Almighty. And then there was nothing of him, because God grasped hold of him at that moment and obtained him for a period of time. That is Bereshith 5:22 through 24. Now, the plan that God has hinted at, and I think fairly overtly, by his presentation of Ethan Ha-Ezraki and now of Chinook, is quite genius. God can infuse any situation whatsoever to influence or incentivize, even protect his plan or people as needed to keep everything moving forward without ever violating free will or cause and effect. Every insertion becomes a teaching opportunity. He continues to work with us and through us rather than overpowering the circumstances or against us. Moshe, Dode, Shalomo, and Yeshaya could speak confidently about the Nakar, for example, this observant foreigner, and the Amma, the productive mother that is his wife, because, well, they had witnessed them in action. Now, as a result, it has become apparent to me that I am actually the one telling Dode who he is and what he would accomplish following his encounter with Yahweh's Amma in the final word picture. In fact, I think I'm the narrator, I should say, singing my wife's praises in Mashal 31, and that I followed her meeting with my own and presented the 89th Mizmor. And I think as we get into it, you'll find that that conclusion is exceedingly well evidenced. Now, of course, you're free to disagree, but prior to me putting all of the clues together to form and frame Yahweh's portrait of his son, no one on earth was aware of any of this. And nothing is more important pursuant to the reconciliation of mankind with God. Based upon my unique understanding of it and love for Dode, for Yahweh, of course, and for the 89th Psalm, I am now certain that Yahweh reinserted me for this purpose and for me to now record it and then share what we discussed. As Yada, I am the Nakar, the observant foreigner of Devarim 29 in the Torah, who Moshe revealed would arrive to oppose the religiosity of Israel as the final messenger to his people. He foretold that I would come as the world returns to the conditions of Sodom, and the world is scorched, likely in nuclear holocaust as a result. So in this regard, it is especially relevant to recognize that Yahweh himself foretold. And this reads, Yahweh will disassociate from him, excluding and dismissing him, he's speaking of Israel, withdrawing from him, as a result of his troubling depravity and oppression, his twisted perversions and malignant corruptions from every association, clan, and tribe of Israel, in accordance with all of the agreed upon mutually binding promises of the covenant that were indelibly written in the scroll of the Torah. That was Devarim, Deuteronomy 29:21. I'm sharing it with you because it leads to the arrival of, prophetically, of the Nakar. And he was needed to be inserted to resolve these problems in Israel, because Israel is exactly this way now, belligerent. Yahweh withdrew. He is not currently protecting. He is not engaged with Israel because he can't be. There's no one who is responsive to him. They have erased his name. They've written him out of their lives. They've replaced his Torah with the Talmud. They've replaced his desire to defend them with their IDF. So he is withdrawal. And his withdrawal is because of their troubling depravity, their oppression, their twisted perversions, their malignant corruptions. And it's from every tribe, every clan of Israel without exception. And it's because they welched on the deal. They have violated the terms of the covenant and of the Torah. So it says then, the last generation, will finally answer. They will finally respond, making a profession and a promise. Your descendants, led among the correct path to receive the benefits of the relationship, will rise, and they will take a stand such that they are established. During a time quite distant from yours, Moshe said, because Hanakri, the observant foreigner, the discerning individual who will pay close attention, carefully examining and thoughtfully considering the evidence, so as to recognize and acknowledge all of this man, unrelated by ethnicity, who will come to perceive and respect what he discovers. It's from Nakar. To recognize and acknowledge, to know and to regard that which he discovers through exploring, observing, and listening. He's going to arrive. He will come from a faraway place at a distant time. Sounds very much like the reinsertion of Chanukh, doesn't it? Sounds very much like God's going to re-enable Ethan Hajraki. The knocker is for now. And it's just astonishing. I keep on coming to this all the time, that the whole religion was based upon a myth that God was foretelling about a Savior Messiah. And the basis of Judaism now and the basis of Christianity. And really, there's no such prophecies. But there are many, many prophecies regarding this Nakri, whether it's the Nakar or Nakri, same individual, this observant foreigner. They're all over the place, beginning in the Torah. There's no mention of a coming Messiah in the Torah. But there is of the Nakri. And when you turn to the most prophetic of books, there's lots of mentions of Dod, but every bit as much of the Nakar. And it talks about this man that's the same one as Obed-Edom, this Ethan Hajraki individual that's going to save many. And it speaks of the Choder arriving also at this time. And yet, with all of these prophecies, and there are so many hundreds of them, I think the number is probably well past 1,000. Profoundly important prophecies. No one is looking for this individual. And they're looking for a mythical individual that does not exist. And yet, the Nakri is going to arrive. He's going to come from a faraway place and time, pursuant to those listening to Moshe as Israelites. And it says specifically, he's going to arrive during the last generation. And he will be the one who finally answers, who makes a profession and promise on behalf of your descendants, so that they take advantage, Asher, of the path to receive the benefits of the relationship. So then they will see, speaking of those who witness the arrival of the Nakri, perceive, witness, and understand that which is plaguing the population of this land and of the earth, this evil disease and overall impairment, which is so grievous, necessitating intercession of this kind to resolve the sickness, precluding the benefits associated with Yahweh. Devarim, Deuteronomy 29:22. People have become religious and therefore plagued, diseased, impaired, and it necessitates the intervention of the Nakar, this Nakri, this observant foreigner. And this is at a time when the world is going to be at war. It says that brimstone, bearing the stench and decay, but also its purifying blue light, and salt, that which can preclude life on land and yet preserves food, will change the composition but not consume this entire region, even much of the earth. That is to say, there will be a nuclear holocaust. And there will also be events which trigger massive tsunamis. That is the brimstone and the salting of the earth. In fact, today they could actually occur simultaneously based upon the weapon the Russians have devised, which is a exceedingly fast torpedo that is a nuclear device that explodes just offshore, causing a radioactive tsunami, salt and radioactive material to destroy life in the places that it comes ashore. He says, nothing will be sown, no seeds dispersed or planted, and nothing harvested, such that nothing will sprout and grow. We're just now 90 days away from the time of Israel's troubles, and it is going to be progressively more difficult to grow food and to produce a harvest. But God's really not talking about crops at this point. He's talking about souls. And what he's saying is that during this time, it is going to be very rare that someone is harvested. As a matter of fact, that the shabuw'ah harvest, I think, will be very few, and it precedes this time of trouble. And the taruw'ah gleaning, which will be fewer still, follows it. And God's just saying it's going to be really sparse out there. And along with all of this, and by the way, that's okay. We're not looking for quantity. We're looking for quality. God's not ever been interested in trying to save everybody or even a majority of people, but of allowing us to demonstrate that we're worthy of spending an eternity with him and being elevated past the fourth, fifth, sixth, and into the seventh dimension. So along with all of this, vegetation will no longer rise. That's speaking of like the mature grain that would be harvested for shabuw'ah. Similar to the destruction of Sodom, scorched, and Amorah, manipulative and tyrannical. He's saying that the politics and the religiosity of the earth are going to be very similar to what was witnessed and described in Sodom and Amorah. And when you consider the current president of the United States, that's exactly what we're witnessing, isn't it? And it says, of the Amma, the reddish ground, and the Saboyim, the swelling of the adulteress, with Yahweh destroyed his resentment and in his hostility. So there will be those that Yahweh does away with at this time. The adulteress is gone. God's has resentment. He has hostility towards not only the tremendous religiosity and politics and conspiracy and anti-Semitism and violence of the Goyim, but also among his people. They're so religious. The stench of religion just permeates them to the point that they don't even want to differentiate between Judaism and being Jewish. And they don't even know that the correct term is Yahud. Then the Gentiles, every ethnicity, will question, for what reason has Yahweh acted in this manner towards this country? What caused this intense animosity, this great antagonism? Boy, with the likes of the influencers that exist today, you can see them wagging the finger at Israel, can't you? Moreover, they will say, regarding the way to the relationship, they neither neglected or they rejected the covenant. That's true with most Yehudim and Israelites, Jews, with Yahweh, the God of their fathers, which to lead them to the benefits of the relationship, he will establish with them by him bringing them out of the realm of the crucibles of oppression. Devarim 29:25. And God is going to withdraw his people from the religious and political corners of the world and bring them back into Israel. And he is on record saying he's going to reestablish his covenant with his people. We can count on this occurring. So they have pursued and served other gods. That is the nature of Judaism. The Christians created Christianity. It's certainly the nature of Christianity. And Jews are responsible for Islam, having sold Muhammad their Talmud stories. So they will have pursued and served other gods, in addition to verbally explaining their allegiance to them. Hashem, G-D. He's not Yahweh, I'll tell you that for sure. These are gods whom they were unfamiliar. They did not know. Negating and dividing them, deceiving and dispersing them. There's nothing worse than false gods to drive people away from the actual God. The animosity of Yahweh against this country and region, Israel as it exists today, will bring upon it all of the harmful consequences that were written in this scroll, that be of the Torah. And rather than God protecting Israel over the next 7 years, they're going to endure the onslaught of their religiosity. They're going to endure what they have done to themselves through their rabbis and their politicians. They brought this on themselves. They have only themselves to blame. And it won't be till taruw'ah in 2033, the 24th of September of 2033, year 6000 Yah, that God's going to intervene and protect that final mortal remnant of his people. Therefore, Yahweh will have uprooted them from their land in frustration, resentment, and consternation, sending them around the world, and in hostile antagonism, as if snapping a twig in anger, as a sign of furious discord, dissension, and disharmony, breaking their branches away in annoyance. He will have thrown them into another land, consistent with this day. Yeah, they would not be residing in the promised land for much of the time between these events, between this speech and the time that it's all reconciled and the Nakar has arrived. The concealed things concerning Yahweh, our God, and the things which are revealed and then discovered and openly known are for us to approach and for our descendants to draw near through the restoring witness of yesterday, today, and tomorrow, so that we may approach by acting upon and engaging in all of the words of this Torah, the source of teaching and guidance. Devarim 29:29. So, speaking of this restoring witness and of this observant foreigner, in the same Torah, Yahweh himself said, "And it shall come to pass, if they will not trust or rely upon you, or listen to the voice of the first and foremost prominent sign, providing proof, then they will trust and rely upon the whole voice of the last sign, providing proof, serving as a signal and a banner, a distinguishing promise and evidence used in the validation of a consent agreement." This is Shemoth, Exodus 4:8. Are you listening? Well, without any viable alternative, and now entering the last days, we are just now less than 3 months away. And I've been at this now for 25 years. It should be obvious to everyone who is paying attention that there is no other option for the role of Miqra'ey. No one else is going to fill the shelves with 35 books written over the course of 100,000 hours, comprising 25,000 pages of amplified translations from the oldest extant sources, including the Dead Sea Scrolls, with tens of thousands of unique insights unheralded previously, and a blog to present them to you. There is no other candidate for the Miqra'ey, observant foreigner, of whom Yahweh here in speaking through Moshe and then Solomon spoke of in Second Chronicles during the dedication speech for the house for Yahweh's name. And that occurred in 961 BCE, and as I said, was recorded in 2 Chronicles 6, as these were recorded in the Torah, the ones I've just shared with you. So Yahweh spoke of me in his vivid portrayal of the Choder, who would replace Dod's father in Yasha'yah 11, becoming the tree of knowledge. In addition to affirming that he would enable our collaboration with his Ruach, God equated me to the Diath in the garden, promising that I'd be Parah. I'd be that productive bull. As a result, I've accompanied Dod to support the Messiah as he delivered, and I explained, the sweeping prophecies presented in Babylon to Daniel in 555 BCE. And in that portrayal, he is Gabriel. He's God's most courageous man. Well, I am Miqra'ey, one who is right about God. After all, I was the first to unveil the meaning of these prophecies and to generate the timeline as everything was foretold and is now playing out before our eyes. The first to recognize that the Rahab is here and that he is POTUS. Moving forward to our day, I have written extensively, sharing everything the world needs to know about Yahweh, Dod, and their imminent return, just 7 years from now. As a result of my 35 books on Yahweh's testimony, revealing who God is and who he is not, I'm the only one who has been more insightful and verbose than Moshe, Dod, or even Yasha'yah. And I'm doing so married to Yahweh's Amma, productive mother. So these are my insights as I have contemplated the prophetic pretext to the last mashal and the instruction and the introduction that accompanies what I would call Dod's song, which is the 89th Mizmor. So I've come to know who I am. I've accepted it. I know where I have been and where Yahweh intends to go with all of this, and much of it I have shared with you. And I know my wife, who Yahweh confirms is the greatest of women, the mother of his covenant family. Your interpretation of this material, of course, is up to you. My job is to find it, to explain it, and yours is to apply what I have discovered as you see fit. Now, returning to the star attraction, when the most select of us, Dod, deselected himself over the affair that he had with Bathsheba, Yahweh did as he had promised. He dispatched a woman and then her husband to talk some sense into the boy who had abandoned his calling. Oh boy, he was now 56 years old, but from God's point of view, he was still his son. And God had done so. There would have been no hope for humankind had he not. The cornerstone upon which the covenant home would be constructed was cracked, and it was crumbling 3,000 years ago. So please consider the gravity of this situation. Billions of men have acted badly, have stolen another's wife. 1 million have even had a husband killed to claim his bride. But this wasn't an ordinary king. He was the future savior of the world. And yet no one knew it at the time, including Dod himself. The solution to Yahweh's savior problem wouldn't be as easy as dialing up a contemporary, because Dod wasn't listening to any of them. There was no way to prevail at this time because no one on the planet had a clue as to what Dod would achieve to salvage the human experiment. And that wouldn't be known for another 30 centuries, at least from the time of Dod's egregious offense. Even then, it would be another score of years thereafter for someone to finally come to the recognition that the king was slated to fulfill Pesach Matzon B'Kudim in his second of 3 lives in 33 CE, as had been foretold. 4 years later, this same man had his wife direct his attention to the last mashal, which has opened the floodgates of understanding. So here we are, the subject of an arranged marriage by Yahweh himself, and likely for this express purpose. And now in the shadow of this very day that we celebrated our 8th anniversary, her name was Lisa, but I named her Leah at her request. Not that she requested Leah, but she requested a new name. I chose Leah. She was abandoned by her father at birth. Her mother was psychotic and abusive. She suffered several miscarriages prior to adopting the daughter of an alcoholic and unfaithful man who also abandoned her, only to have her adopted daughter rebuff her love. Perfectly prepared for this mission, to have empathy with what Yahweh was enduring. And as for us, we connected online. I think I've shared this story with you many times before, and it occurred a decade before we actually met because she was trying to assess why Ruth, Dode's great-grandmother, referred to herself as an Amma, a productive mother. At the time, her opening question to me was the same as she posed to Dode in the 31st Mashal. She did so to find out why I was translating the Torah and prophets, because in my books, which were posted online, she noted that I had written extensively about the feminine attributes associated with the Ruach. Our mutual intellectual curiosity blossomed long before we met and fell passionately in love. A decade of just exchanging emails about Torah. And not just with one another, but with the Torah, its Bereth, its Moedim, and with Yahweh and Dode is what we developed our love around. Now, as for me, well, I've shared this previously. It bears repeating. My father was so abusive, I had to get a restraining order against him. My mother proved useless in this regard. My eldest son turned against me as I was working to protect, enable, and enrich him. His actions were so vile. After confronting him to no avail, I was determined never to speak to him or see him again. It had all progressed as was, I guess, required, really, to properly engage in something quite similar, trying to resolve this dispute between Yahweh and his son. I have experience in such things. But of course, as previously noted, there is more to the story. 24 years prior to this moment, Yahweh introduced himself and asked me to work with him, almost 25 years ago now. I went to Torah school with Yahweh as my professor and his Ruach as my tutors, investing 100,000 hours of observation and contemplation. 100,000 hours, think of that. I've worked half days really ever since our introduction. Half days don't mean 4 hours. They mean 12 to 14 hours every day. For a decade of that time, Leah was an email away, and for the next 8 years, she was at my side. In sharing what we were learning, we became inseparable, with all of the synergy of an ideal marriage. A growing covenant family became our children. It wasn't a surprise, of course, to Yah. He knew that it would all play out this way. He had foreseen it. So confident was he that God began sharing the ultimate flashback in his story long, long ago, speaking of it prophetically as far back as the opening chapters of the Torah. It was prophetic, really. The two people who came to love and respect father and son, Yahweh and Dode, more than any other, devoting their lives to restoring the reputations that the religious had forlorn. And they would answer the call because they were listening, because they were willing, they were responsive. It is not every day that two otherwise ordinary people get to save the world. But that is the position that Yahweh has placed us in. In our service to Father and Son, we have already restored the relationship that Dode had fractured. We read Dode's meltdown in Mizmor 51, then of Leah's response in Mashal 31 to show how we had prevailed. We know the result is manifest in the glorious 116th Psalm, which I've shared on this program. But for it to occur, Dode needed a father too. He needed a dose of tough love with a side of unrelenting judgment, all served with a bouquet of glorious acclaim. And this is what leads us to the 89th Mizmor. Now, while I still think it was my wife's words that ultimately sobered up our intoxicated son, especially when I reinforced them with the 89th Mizmor, he came around and he wrote the 116th Mizmor on the way out of this mess that he had previously made. King Dode would go on to fulfill the Miqra'ey and the Mow'ed, just as he had admitted in the 116th song, and as it had been said of him and of his relationship with the lesser luminary, working together, lesser luminary reflecting the sun's brilliance for having done so. Now, I would write what has become the tree of knowledge to turn Yisrael's attention to the tree of lives. And now on the cusp of shabuw'ah and in anticipation of taruw'ah, Dode's adoptive father knows that he will be laying down his life to facilitate the proper homecoming for the Son of God and his return. We are positioned to appreciate the reference finally to Yishai pursuant to the Choder. As I've shared, it's rather obvious that God would have me replace him. It reads, a Choder stem will be extended out of the stump which has been cut down, so that it now is once again capable of supporting new growth. It had been Yishai to stand out and be noticed, drawing attention to the substance of existence as a Natsar, observant branch, by means of its roots and that which keeps it anchored, steadfast and nourished, such that he will continually bear an abundance of fruit, being a productive bull, while encouraging productivity in others. Parah. That was Yasha'ah 11:1. Yishai was the fallen stump that had to be cut down for the Netzer, observant branch, to be extended as the Choder stem, revitalizing the roots that had gone dormant over time. Yisrael would become productive again, at long last. Symbolically, there would be resolution also in hyssop. It's first used in Shemoth names, Exodus 12:22, when addressing how Passover would become the door to life. The blood of the lamb was smeared on the entrance to every home by dipping hyssop into it. And it was Yada who would represent the Ezob and the service to the souls, benefiting from the blood of the Al that was shed for them on Pesach. Then in Kara, Leviticus 14:4-6, and 49-52, Aesop is presented as the way of purging the stigma of leprosy, a man and also from his home. And since the only reported case of it, other than the momentary sign on Moshe's hand when, he attempted to, or when God wanted to show that he was with him. But the only other case was the attempted subversion of Moshe's credibility, if you remember, as Moshe being called to be Yahweh's spokesperson, his sister, Miriam, embittered, uh, chose to just speak out and speak over him, to replace him, to also speak to God. And so we see hyssop, as the cure for that mentality. Now, apart from the two aforementioned Torah citations, this one associated with Ethan Ha-Izraki and Malekam, and Dode's defense, or Dode's reference, I should say, and the 51st Mizmor, he used hyssop, and it's deployed an 8th and 9th time, and he used it to say this is going to cause me to appear clean. He also used it it's also used in the Torah and other places, but we find hyssop in a very important usage in the story of how the mortal remnant of Israel is going to be purged of their religiosity. This is in Numbers 19:6 and Numbers 19:17 through 19, in conjunction, of course, with the Adamah Parah. Hyssop is added to the blazing fire of the altar in which the productive bull has been placed to purge the returning remnant of Israel of their guilt on taruw'ah, just 10 days before Dode's return as king, and along with Yahweh. Now, as I've shared previously, when pondering the implications of Dode's reference during his meltdown in the 50th Psalm, hyssop is actually a remedy for leprosy, and it's curative when purging a wide range of ailments. The following assessments are supported by both traditional therapies and by emerging scientific research. Now, these include that hyssop is beneficial for skin health. When diluted hyssop's essential oils are successfully used topically to treat epidermis infections, even acne and puncture wounds, and it is known to restore disfigured and scar tissue due to its antiseptic and anti-inflammatory properties. Second, it's antimicrobial and antiviral. Hyssop exhibits strong antimicrobial, antifungal, and antiviral properties. That's a lot for one herb. It is used therapeutically to treat all manner of ailments and is even proved to inhibit herpes viruses and to treat respiratory and urinary tract infections. Third, it has an effect on the immune and circulatory systems. Hyssop boosts immune function by fighting pathogens and improving circulation. It is demonstrated as a remedy for arthritis, gout, and inadequate blood flow. Number 4 is as respiratory support. The herb acts as an expectorant, helping to loosen mucus and relieve coughs, colds, bronchitis, and asthma symptoms. It reduces airway constriction and allergic reactions more effectively than corticosteroid drugs. Number 5, digestive aid. The oils extracted from hyssop stimulate the production of digestive enzymes and bile, improving digestion, reducing gas, bloating, and cramping. It serves to protect the stomach lining and helps prevent ulcers. Number 6, it's anti-inflammatory. It's an antioxidant. Hyssop is rich in polyphenols and flavonoids, which are such that the herb combats oxidative stress. It reduces inflammation while lowering the risk of chronic disease, including even cancer. I think of our good friend Kirk, who is probably just now completing his final treatment for prostate infection of this kind. We'll celebrate with you this evening, Captain Kirk. And 7, the mental and emotional well-being is another effect of hyssop. It has a calming aroma, which is used in aromatherapy to reduce stress, to enhance mood, and to promote recovery from anxiety and depression. In addition, the prolific lavender flowers seem symbolic of Shamma'im and indicative of the concluding colors of the rainbow, again, symbolic of the covenant. All right, so now we know the identity of the man conveying Dode's song on behalf of his father. So it's time we venture back into the ultimate Mizmor, the greatest song ever sung. I see it as not only the cornerstone of the covenant, and so does God, by the way, and of Yahweh's home on earth, but also as the keystone of my assigned mission. I think it was inspired and written, well, at least 8 years before the 60th Yobel. The 60th Yobel year of 3000 Yah, which is 968 BCE, would have been 4 years prior to the conclusion of Dode's first of 3 lives. The 89th Psalm is the epitome of divine prose. It's the most important piece of literature, I think, ever written. So this is a Maskal, a portrayal of insights to contemplate and comprehend. It was composed by Ethan, the reoccurring one, who was often deployed. He is Ha-Ezraki, the tree of logical expressions. I'll share this introduction with you, and then since we're already over an hour, we'll conclude today's program and rejoin at the same place tomorrow. Ethan Ha-Ezraki would write, a Maskal, a poetic portrayal of insights to contemplate and comprehend. Prudent lyrics written to convey important ideas worthy of thoughtful consideration. Of Ethan, the perpetually reoccurring and resolute, the continually deployed and eternally engaged, the long established and perennially unrelenting and productive one. Ha-Ezraki, the one springing up and coming forth as if he were a tree, prepared to shine on time with logical expressions on the sequence of events. That is Mizmor Psalm 89 in its dedication. So it is, as I had shared, a Maskal is a comprehensive portrayal of rational ideas derived as insights. This is delivered for and on behalf of Dode. Israel and the world would come to know, comprehend, and share in the success delivered by the lyrics that were comprised. And as for Mr. Ethan Ha-Ezraki, he is as Yahweh has named him. And here, as Ethan opens by sharing his life's journey in God's presence, he wants us to know that Yahweh is God's name, and he is loving, and that Yahweh has remained consistent throughout time. We will be reassured as Ethan opens with the first line of his prose, that God is as he was in the garden. He is as he was with Noah. He is as he was with Abraham, as he is now with Dode. So we'll return to this place in our program tomorrow. Thank you for listening. It's an amazing journey, quite the awakening, and tremendously reaffirming as we continue to grow in our knowledge of God. Good evening.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch Yao on our next podcast.